Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube video. Today I am going to have a very long and lengthy explanation of ROCD, also known as relationship OCD. I'm going to talk about a bunch of different points I have written down. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what ROCD is, different types of keys to understand when you're actually going through the OCD recovery journey, how to start recovery, understanding the importance about how ROCD operates, the meat and potatoes of the journey, and then ultimately up to a bunch of different belief system that keeps ROCD sufferers stuck. So I think it's really important. This specific video is meant to be an all-encompassing video on ROCD about every single facet that's involved with the journey, every single potential belief system that might be keeping you stuck, everything from the fear of losing the relationship. Am I in the right one? Is this person a cheater? Does he know about my past of me cheating? Retroactive jealousy, all the compulsions, exposures, everything literally that an ROCD sufferer will need to know is going to be in this video. Obviously, the recovery journey from ROCD is very up and down, lots of setbacks and relapses. So this isn't just, watch this video and go on your way, but this will give you a really good idea of what needs to be done. Now, when we go into the belief system, I'm going to go into the first book on the reading list, which is How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes, Anything, by Dr. Albert Ellis. And I'm going to go through page number 96 and 97. And in those pages, I'm going to break down one of the more common belief systems of the activating event, maybe breaking up with someone, and or the fear of being in the wrong relationship. And that's basically how all those compulsions start and how OCD convinces you that you're in the wrong relationship and so forth. And I think it's really, really, really important to cover all these certain things. So the first thing I want to talk about is the most important part of our OCD, and that is you're never going to be able to get certainty whether you're in the right relationship or not. One of the number one things our OCD sufferers do is they go round and round in circles, understandably so, because it feels as real as it can get, looking to see if they're in the wrong relationship, if they're in the right relationship, asking their friends and family. The number one and the most important thing, and I'll say it again, is breaking down that you'll never be able to know for sure that you're in the quote-unquote right relationship. And it's also important to break down that there's no such thing as the right relationship. It's a myth. So the intro is, what is ROCD? Okay, so it's relationship OCD. The reason why it's called relationship OCD, because it's not just intimate partners, it's relationships. It could be relationships with your friends, your families, all the way to your pets, strangers, classmates, teachers, anything. It's not just intimate relationships. Now, I am going to focus more on intimate relationships, such as boyfriend, girlfriends, partners, husband, wives, etc., etc., etc. So why is ROCD so prevalent? Now, ROCD is prevalent for a plethora of different reasons, all the way from socioeconomics, all the way to religious doctrines, all the way to social media, all the way to the cultures we live in, with our friends and families, things, the conditioning, the time period we live in. But let's go with modern day dating. The reason why relationships are more than likely a massive problem in the OCD community is because of the fear of being in the right or wrong relationship. So let me give you an example. If you go on social media and you just type in, am I in the right relationship? Okay. Hundreds, thousands of videos will come up. Hundreds or thousands of articles will come up breaking down how you can know, how you can trust your gut, but your gut's been hijacked. It's also very easy to break that down. There's more than likely no such thing as gut intuition. Not in the way that people think. It's more probability and chance. So like, let's say something happens in your life and you have a gut feeling. Humans go, my gut feeling is telling me that I'm in the right relationship. But that's not how reality works more than likely. What's happening is you felt something, you connected those two with your mind by no short of saying, not using rational and logical thinking. And what you did was you said, oh, because I had a gut feeling and this happened, it meant it was supposed to be that way. But since that can't be proven or falsified, that's considered an irrational belief. I personally don't believe in gut intuition. I don't believe in karma. I don't believe in any sort of long-lasting jealousy that is beneficial. I can understand why people get jealous. I don't believe in the right marriage, that the perfect marriage. I don't believe monogamy is for everyone. I don't believe that in order to have a good relationship that someone needs to be religious. And again, so there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these things in moderation, in a balanced approach, more than likely. But the reason why this is sticking is because you're holding really strong irrational beliefs about these situations, and that is actually what's perpetuating the OCD cycle. And that's super K. The celebrity stuff as well. I mean, the tabloids. Anyone can just turn on TikTok nowadays and give relationship advice. But the people who have the best long-lasting relationships, like my in-laws' parents, Erica's parents, her father's parents, they've been married for 65 years. For people to stay together for 65 years is going to be a lot more rare today because of the instant gratification, because of everyone wanting things now, because of the low frustration tolerance that's perpetuated in our society. So it's really important to realize that long relationships, whether you're married or not, boyfriend, girlfriend, wife, husband, etc., is happening because there is compromise. There is learning to put up with the other person when they're annoying you, and so forth and so forth. I live right over an airport, which is always a great thing. At least I'm not by the military base. When the F-16s go over, that is crazy. So the second thing I want to talk about is, do you have ROCD? Now, it's also important to premise this, that if you're desperately trying to figure out whether something is ROCD or not, that's another dead end, just like in the beginning. Well, you'll never know if you're in the right relationship or not. But I always tell people who come in for coaching or the ROCD webinars, treat it as if it's a belief you want to break down. It's the simplest way to do it. Whether you have it or not really that important, because OCD will doubt everything. Oh, do I have OCD? Do I not have OCD? Treat it as if you do. Treat it as if the irrational belief is there, which it more than likely is, and break it down. So inside that cycle, we have compulsions and avoidance behaviors. Okay, so because compulsions and avoidance, there's so much overlap, I'm just kind of blend these together and go over some of these. So the biggest two is obviously confession and or reassurance seeking. Confession to your partner. Now, first of all, I think it's important to highlight why we confess. It feels so real to us that if we don't confess in our minds, it will feel like the entire world is going to end. It feels as if we're sitting on a stoop, the home is burning down around you, this house is caught on fire, and I'm stuck and I can't move. That's how real it feels to the sufferer. So reassurance and confession. Venting is another big one too. Venting looks a little bit similar to confession, but a simple confession would be like, oh my gosh, I have to tell you again about my past. Where venting is more, this is how my day was, this is what's going on, blah, 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 and turns into another problem. Comparing on social media is another really big compulsion. Analyzing and rumination. Analyzing, I separate the two. It's nuances, but analyzing is outwardly trying to figure something out. So you're on social media, you're Googling, you're looking up articles. Where rumination is more automatic, intrusive thoughts, images, sensation. Obviously, there's rumination that one can partake in, but rumination is also something that's going to fire until the fear comes down, and that's a really big thing to cover. So when you're on a date with your partner, I always use this the same example, and the waitress goes by and you start thinking, oh my gosh, am I more attracted to her? That 0 to 100, that, at 6 o'clock p.m. you felt great, and 6:02 p.m. just from her walking by, you had all these intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges. That is primarily how rumination operates, and that is operating as a symptom of the fear. So you can't bring down rumination how people think. I personally, again, this is just semantics and nuances, I would say you can stop analyzing pretty quickly, but you will not be able to stop the majority of rumination for a year or two down the road for many people, because that is literally what is going to perpetuate until that core fear comes down, which we're going to talk about at the end for a long time. So, and then the common avoidance behaviors, right? Avoiding being in a relationship or avoiding leaving a relationship, because there are times and periods where things can be really rough. There's really unfortunate scenarios and people don't want to leave relationships. It's something not talked about too much because of the fear of the discomfort. Social media, searching, comparing on social media, or deleting social media because you don't want to look at members of the opposite sex and think they're too attractive. no intimacy, or trying to have too much intimacy engage in sex to prove why you're attracted. Remember, there's always usually an avoidance and then trying to prove, and the moderation and balance is where recovery lies. Avoiding marriage, avoiding moving in together or furthering relationships, avoiding having children, avoiding hanging out with their in-laws. I can't do that. I don't know if I like him. I don't want to be around his in-laws, so forth and so forth. Not posting social media statuses anymore or posting them too much in order to prove to one another. And that's the big thing. Now, the reason why we do all these compulsions and the reason why we engage in all these avoidance behaviors is simple. To rid ourselves of chronic anxiety and panic, depersonalization and derealization, chronic shame and guilt, and intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, and urges. All the symptoms, the hodgepodge of the chicken noodle soup of symptoms, we are trying to run from those things. So what we do is we engage in these compulsions and reassurance behaviors to rid ourselves of the way we're feeling. Because to us as OCD sufferers, it's the same thing. I want to stop here for a second. I always like to say codependency is just the ROCD of non-sufferers, and there's a lot of overlap. These tools I'm going over can be applied to any relationship. This is so far beyond ROCD or codependency or any of that. This is the problem that almost everyone in a relationship will have. And I do suggest you, everyone in this video, go watch Dr. Albert Ellis's The Dire Need for Love. It's an hour-and-a-half lecture, I believe, from the 90s. It was like 92 maybe. Terrific lecture, really will go hand in hand with this. There's 3 keys I want to talk about before we start going into how to actually recover from ROCD. And the first one is, it will 100% convince you that you're in the wrong relationship. Number 2, it will bring up any flaw, any perceived flaw of the person you're with and hone in on it. I didn't notice that 15 years ago. Oh my gosh, how did I not notice that? Oh my gosh, they're so ugly, so forth. Oh my gosh, that joke they made, they're such a terrible person. Oh, so forth and so forth. Or on the other hand, oh my gosh, if they only knew this about me, almost caught into those morals and values. That's where the shame and guilt goes in. So there could be a false memory and real event. ROCD can be intertwined with many different things. False memory and real event, maybe some harm OCD, POCD, all sorts of stuff like that. Even maybe someone who has existential OCD and ROCD might be thinking, oh my gosh, if my partner only knew what I was thinking about, I wasn't present in any of our conversations, I'm not even really here, do I really like them, do I really love them? How am I going to be able to have a future with them if I'm too busy thinking about these other fears? And that's key. And the most important, back to point number 1, is it will convince you that you need to know if you're in the right relationship. And there's no such thing as the right relationship. People come together for different reasons and different cultures and different socioeconomic backgrounds. This is really important to break down. There is no universal principle stating that you must be with the person that you're with. Because if there was a universal principle stating that you must be with that person, if you weren't with them, a lightning bolt would come down, strike you, and kill you. And has that ever happened? Never. And people have died from lightning, but not in that scenario. Maybe. So now let's go into the remainder of the video. I want to go into starting recovery, understanding the practical application of OCD, the meat and potatoes, then we're going to go into the book. And I think it's really key to do that as well. But I'm going to have a great sip of my I Love You to the Moon and Back cup. Erica's cup. Okay. The first thing when it comes to starting recovery is figuring out what the hell is even going on. By finding maybe a community like OCD recovery, or surrounding yourself with some people who might understand OCD. If you're going to work with someone, you want to have a pretty good knowledge of they understand OCD or not. And because there's so much information out there, it's easier to tell when someone understands OCD. It's not as easy to tell if they really understand OCD. A lot of people understand OCD, but 99.9% of the people that work with OCD do not understand the nuances. I always use the example of, you know, when you go into a spa and like in the back of the receptionist, there's like that waterfall, and it's like on graded rock. The outside layer is what most people understand, what most people get about OCD. That's like the simple exposures, watching documentaries on people who have broken up or divorces. And then as you get deeper into the wall and you get more into the grates, that's where the more difficulties of understanding ROCD comes to play. And that's where a lot of people get stuck, because there's little tiny things that ROCD, any sufferer, is doing that unless you have a great eye for it, you will miss it. And unfortunately, ROCD sufferers, if they do something like talk therapy or group therapy or just, regular, a lot of the old school methods, they'll just go round and round and just receive reassurance and stuff like that. When people are like, oh, you don't have to be with him, he's such a mean guy. And like, that's not actually gonna, and there's always a time and place. Like, we're not saying you can never break up, but that gray area for, there's no line where people are like, how do I know when when I should leave, and how do I know when I shouldn't? This is where the uncertainty comes in. It's really, really, really important to break that down. So remember, the first part about starting recovery is finding someone who understands recovery. That is key. The second thing I want to talk about is understanding how OCD operates, the practicality of OCD. And inside that, why you're stuck, aka the belief systems, the compulsions, and the avoidance, why relapses happen, setbacks happen, because they do, why there's no timeline, that why themes will change and everything will morph. Understanding the practical application of OCD is so much more important than understanding anything about neuroscience, neurophysiology, the prefrontal cortex, dopamine and serotonin. And look, we know the dopamine and serotonin theory isn't substantial by any means. Now, can medications, I can't advise on medications, but can medications help you in this journey, take the edge off? Sure. Is it going to change your belief system about, if your partner leaves you, that your life is ruined? Absolutely not. We know this isn't true, because if it was truly a genesis of a chemical imbalance theory, we'll use serotonin and dopamine, the moment that was put back in balance, you would never suffer ever again. You would be cured. You wouldn't be recovered, you'd be cured. Very important to break that down. It's a simple myth. It's comical that it's even around. We know it's not true. But sometimes in life, people don't like saying they were wrong, especially professionals. That's another story. So that's funny. The third thing I want to talk about is the meat and potatoes of all of our journey. And inside of that is feeling all the intrusiveness, the confusion, furthering your relationship under extreme discomfort. Remember, that line of should I leave or should I not is not a line. It's an ocean. It's a gray ocean. And inside that gray ocean is a plethora of intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges, anywhere, any place, anytime. And inside the rest of the meat and potatoes is building your lifestyle structures, getting back out there, going to work if you haven't been working, building those habits back up, exercise, working on balance and moderation. It's a complete life overhaul. The biggest mistake I've made on my recovery process, the biggest mistake I've made in business, the biggest mistake I've made in my relationship is looking at it with a deadline, subconscious deadline. Not I'm going to have this done by this time, but just not accepting that this is a journey for life. Not that I'm saying you'll suffer for life, but there's nothing that says that things have to pan out the way you want. So you might as well start building other aspects of your life and taking this along for the ride. That is so key when it comes to the meat and potatoes, because many people think the meat and potatoes is breaking down beliefs, is doing the exposures. Those are the pinpricks to the engine, to the heart of OCD. You're poking in the heart, but the rest of all the wounds to the OCD cycle, just using this as a metaphor, is wearing discomfort, building lifestyle factors, and everything like that. That is super key. Now I want to go into the second part of the video, which will be breaking down belief systems, breaking down the fear of breaking up, and why it's not the end of the world as we imagine. But in order to do that, one will need a solid understanding of this book. So this book is the first book on the reading list, which is called How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, Yes Anything. And many people ask, well, Nick, this book is not about OCD, and you're right. It's not about OCD in the way where it's on the title. But this book breaks down belief systems, which breaking down belief systems is such a critical aspect of the OCD and anxiety recovery journey. It's something that many of us get wrong. So in order to actually break down belief systems, we really want a good understanding of this book. But before I actually go into this, I want to talk about some exposures and why exposures usually aren't enough. Now, exposures for a very long time were thought to be the gold standard in the unlatching mechanism of OCD. Now, some people could do some exposures, go on their way with mild OCD and see great progress. Some people will need much, much, much more. I was one of those people. It got to a point for me where exposures and all my fears did jack shit, because I had done all the exposures I needed. I was out there living my life. I was building my business. I was doing many other things, hiking. I mean, I had it all. My life was amazing in many different ways, but I was still so fucking latched. And the reason why I was latched was because the fear was still perpetuating heavily in the background. Sensory motor with me, for an example. Many of you have seen my videos. The fear of being stuck with my sensation forever was perpetuating along and along. So some of the exposures you can do is having a child, if that's something you were planning, right? You don't have to just go out and make a baby for no reason, but we're just using that as an example. Moving in together, furthering your relationship, getting married. Many people come in and they say, I have a wedding coming up in 3 weeks. I'm freaking out. What do I do? Go on with the marriage. Don't cancel it. Don't cancel those vacations. Life is going to throw exposure after exposure after exposure at you. If you're married to someone and you're living with them, you're going to have exposures all day long. You won't really need to chase them. Now, if there's certain things that you're avoiding, that will need to be brought back in. But the outward exposures will come to you after a while. So after you've done a hierarchy, if you've been moving for 1-2 years and you're still kind of stuck, this is by far going to be the most important thing. Now, let's go to my favorite 2 pages in the entire book. Many people hear me talk about these pages. This is page 96 and 97 in obviously the English version, and this is the A plus B equals C worksheet. Now, A is activating events, B is your belief system, and then C is your emotional consequence, which has 2 parts, your behaviors and your emotions. So let's go over, the activating event, okay? It could be internal or external, real or imagined, okay? Situation, my wife and I disagreed about something. This is a great example. Then you have your belief system. This is the number one thing that perpetuates shame, guilt, anxiety, panic, sensitized nerves. Now, mind you, just by reading this and doing this a couple times, your nerves are not going to be desensitized. You're not just going to recover, but it is a step in the right direction. So some of those irrational beliefs are your demands, your musts, absolute shoulds and oughts, your awfulizing and catastrophizing. This is horrible. This is terrible. If I broke up and I was alone forever, it's the worst thing ever. We know it's not. There's people who are alone and they're not chronically depressed. Frustration and tolerance to I can't stand it. Self-downing, other-downing, and life-downing. I'm bad or worthless. She's a bad person. Life is not worthwhile, so forth and so forth. And then inside the consequence, in the irrational belief cycle, we have the major dysfunctional, unhealthy emotions and the maladaptive, unhelpful behaviors. So we have, let's go over some of the dysfunctional negative emotions. So we have anxiety and fear, shame and embarrassment, rage and anger, guilt, depression, problematic jealousy, problematic envy, and hurt. And then the maladaptive behaviors, we have social avoidance, taking care of yourself, not exercising, not resting, being aggressive, and all these other things, avoidance, compulsions, all of that. Now, the reason why I talk about this so much is I don't see how anyone would be able to recover from a chronically latched fear that's been lingering in the background without a solid understanding of the principles of rational thinking, which is super key. So let's go and plug in the main one. Okay, let's plug in, how do I know if I'm in the right relationship? Or never knowing, that's a better one, never knowing I'm in the right relationship. So the activating event would be never knowing that you're in the right relationship. You write these out yourself, writing it down is critical. Okay, so here's the belief system. I absolutely must know if I'm in the right relationship. It is awful, terrible, and horrible to not know if I'm in the right relationship. I can't stand not knowing if I'm in the right relationship. Life is not worthwhile if I can't know if I'm in the right relationship. And that will lead to extreme intrusive thoughts, images, sensation, urges, rumination, analyzing, severe panic, anxiety, depression, maybe even depersonalization and derealization. And those maladaptive behaviors we were talking about before would be everything we covered in the beginning. So that's leaving relationships, constantly compulsively searching social media, looking on Facebook at old photos, avoiding intimacy, not getting married, not moving in together, not having children if those are your goals, and all the other common avoidance and compulsive behaviors that we covered in the very beginning. And what happens is all those are intertwined into that unhealthy A plus B equals C. Now, I want to stop there for a second and talk about how most people operate, including myself. I was for many years, my entire life. I think it's an innate, biological, learned, conditioned way to think. You made me angry. You guilted me. You shame me. Stop guilting me. Stop shaming me. You're offending me. We hear this all day, every day, in other different forms. You made me angry, much more common. But did they? Did they actually create? Are they the genesis of your guilt? Is this the genesis of your anxiety? I don't know. Pretty easy to break down. Let me show you. Let's say someone called your wife an idiot in public. 100 people, different scenarios, but the same thing. Your wife's an idiot. Hit her at the bar. Oh, idiot, your wife's moron, stupid. 6 people might want to start a fight. 12 people might yell. 8 people might pull them aside and have a talk. 20 people might laugh about it, and the rest might be completely indifferent. The activating event, the person calling your wife an idiot, is the same. Your belief system about the event, that is what's perpetuating the unhealthy emotions. Anger, resentment, physical altercation in these scenarios and stuff like that. Now, I want to go to a healthier option, okay? And then we'll go through one more exercise in the book because I think it's really important to break down, maybe another fear, such what we were doing, the fear of not being in the right relationship, the fear of the relationship ending. We'll do that one next. I think it's a really good one. A lot of people suffer with that because what happens is you put your relationship on the pedestal and that's your entire identity. So now let's go to your disputing your irrational beliefs. So these are the questions you want to ask yourself. The way I do it was I would put like question, cue, and then answer rationally. So where is this belief holding me? Is it helpful or getting me into trouble? The I must know if I'm in the right relationship or not, or wrong relationship. Well, it's obviously getting me jack shit because I'm having all these unhealthy emotions and compulsive behaviors that are keeping that cycle alive. Where is the evidence to support my irrational belief? There's no evidence. There's no universal principle saying that you need to know if you're in this relationship or not. It might feel that way, but there's no substantial relationship. Hopefully they're not redoing. They've been doing the what's it called? The driveway to one of my neighbor's house. Be breaking it up. I have to move inside. Is it really awful? Is it 100% terrible? No, we know it's not. Because there's a lot of people out there that will never know. Divorces happen all the time in Western areas like America, the UK. The divorce rates are 50% after 8-12 years. Is it logical? It's not logical. It's not logical because there's no universal truth. There's no universal truth saying that you must know if you're in the right relationship or not. This is going to take some time to adopt, but once you start to adopt it, this is how you get to your new functional, healthy emotions and behaviors. So those functional, healthy emotions are concern, disappointment, healthy annoyance, remorse, regret, sadness, healthy concern for a relationship, healthy envy and sorrow. And adaptive and helpful behaviors are meeting friends or seeking support, exercising, assertive behaviors, and all the other things that you can stand up for yourself, have a conversation, not need to yell, not need to scream, not need other people to hear you, not need people to think you're right, not need your partner to think you're right, and so forth and so forth. And that is basically the biggest most important aspect of the ROCD recovery journey is the belief systems. Those belief systems that are holding us back so much. Now let's go into, let's see, what's a good one? We'll go to another one about breaking up, because I think, like I said, that's such an important one. Okay, here we go. Let's use REBT exercise number 17. This is in chapter 17. It's exercise 17 in chapter 17. If you backslide, try again. Okay, we're going to use REI, rational emotive imagery, to get over the emotional upsetness that you have about falling back to your previous level of disturbance, or use it for almost any other problem of anxiety, depression, or rage that you might have. In using rational emotive imagery, you first imagine one of the worst things that might happen to you. So let's look at it together, okay? You're in a relationship for all these years. You've been chronically suffering. The person you're with comes home and says they're leaving you. I'm done with you. I don't want to be with you anymore. It's over, okay? You let yourself feel anxious, depressed, or self-hating about how you've fallen back after previously working hard or effectively. Now, this could be for the first time ever. It doesn't just have to be about working on it for the first time. So you think about it, right? Okay, so what would really happen if my relationship ended? How horrible would it actually be? Okay, so let's see. Let's go to the worst case scenario. Choose me and my wife for an example. We go on. So we own a business together. We're married. So there's a bunch of legal things there. We'd have to separate the business. We'd have to separate some of our other policies. All the legal documents and structures that we're on together would have to be broken down. We'd have to obviously get a divorce. We don't have a prenup, but we would be okay with that, I think. We don't have any children, so that's a positive. Doesn't make it too sticky there. We do have 2 dogs, so that would be annoying. We'd have to probably move into separate places, but because it's a little bit more expensive where we live, it might be a little bit difficult in the beginning sometimes to kind of find spots. And all these other things that you basically will go through and break down rationally. And that is how, in total, everything we covered here and everything we covered here is how you recover from ROCD or any OCD. No timelines and deadlines. Everyone's journeys will look different. You'll never be able to know whether you're in the right relationship or not. You'll never be able to get certainty on flaws or anything like that. Didn't talk a lot about uncertainty in this video, but please go watch our video, because a lot of it, well, I did talk about it. I just didn't use the word. When I talked about the meat and potatoes, that's all moving with uncertainty. So thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed. Hopefully you come to one of our ROCD webinars or other webinars. Please email phil@ocdrecovery.com. We have OCD Recovery Part 1, 2, and 3 coming up, and Existential coming up. We have another POCD coming up. We have a lot of really good ones coming up. So hopefully see you there. If you have any questions, ask down below. Remember, reassurance and seeking confession gets you nowhere. Thank you again, and as always, have a great day.